Hello and welcome to another Syncrolight video tutorial. Today we're going to take a look at the basics of networking. It's important to understand a little bit of networking when using our Pixel controllers. So the details I'm going to go through today are only very basic parts of networking, just enough to help you get going with our controllers. It's not intended to be a comprehensive networking tutorial. I'll try and keep things as simple as possible and only discuss the parts that you're going to really need to understand and know to get you going. So to start with, the basics of networking is to get two devices connected and talking to each other. Each device on the network needs a unique address. Now this is called an IP address. Now for TCP, it's called an Internet Protocol address or an IP address. For version 4 IP, it consists of 4 digits or 4 numbers, such as 192.168.0.10. There's two ways that IP addresses can be assigned to a device. One is a static IP address, where you program the address directly onto that device and it never changes. The other way is called dynamic IP. When you plug a device in to your broadband router, a little application on the broadband router, a little utility called DHCP, will allocate your device an IP address. Now that IP address can change over time, or if you turn the device off and plug it back in later, it could be allocated a different IP address. We often tend to use static IP addresses in light shows because you want an address assigned directly to the device that you know is never going to change. The other reason we like to use static IP addresses is that when you're running a light show, you often set up a separate network with just a standalone, nothing fancy, just a standard 5-port hub, which won't have a sort of DHCP server running on it. So you can't use dynamic IP addresses in that case. So static IP addresses are often the safest thing to do. There's no complex network setup, and you don't have to worry about setting up a DHCP server on your network or using any sort of fancy router. One other important part of networking to go with the IP address is what's called a subnet mask, and this controls the range of addresses, a range of IP addresses on the network. We're going to use what's called a Class C subnet mask. So it's got 3255s and a 0. This basically means that the first 3 parts of the IP address are always going to be the same, and it's the last number that denotes the device ID on the network. Now with our Pixel controllers, they're typically factory set to a static IP address of 192.168.168.130, but always check the label and documentation that comes with the controller to confirm this. Although it's a static IP address that's preset, once you've got connected to the controller, you can change that address to whatever you like to match your own network requirements. And the controllers often do have a factory reset procedure. Again, check the documentation should you ever forget the address or need to reset it back to that factory set address. Now when you first get your controller, there's a few steps you need to go through to get your controller up and running. Often your own broadband router will use a different range of addresses to what the controller is preset to. So you need to change your computer's IP address so it's in the same range as the Pixel controller so you can see it. You can change it back later on to a different address once you've got connected and set up your controller. But just to get connected, you'll need to go into your computer network settings and change the IP address. We'll go through this in a minute so you can see exactly what to do. The other thing you often find is the firewall often can interfere and stop communications between the device and the controller from time to time. So if you do have problems getting connected to the controller, try turning your firewall, whether it's Windows Defender or McAfee or Bitdefender, whatever you've got installed, try turning that off temporarily just to get connected to the device. Once your device is set up, you should be able to turn it back on, and you can set up rules in the firewall to allow access to the device if you need to. If you're on a laptop that's got Wi-Fi, or a PC that's got a separate LAN and Wi-Fi connection, it often helps just to turn the Wi-Fi off temporarily, just so you don't get confused of which network you're talking to and which you're setting up. And then once you've done that, you can connect your Pixel controller to the Ethernet switch. These details are assuming you've just got a basic home broadband switch. If you've got anything more professional or VLANs or anything, then you'll probably need to take some extra steps to get your controller connected. Once you've connected an Ethernet cable to the back of the controller and to your broadband switch or router, just check the link lights next to the jack have lit up to show there's a good connection between them. Once you've done this, you can go ahead and start the Syncrolight Device Manager. Right, so we've got an Ethernet controller connected to our network now. I'm just going to go through the manual process of getting connected to this controller. The controller's got the factory default settings on it, so it's the 192.168.168.130 IP address, and we're just going to go through getting connected to it. Just show you a few things first. We just get the command prompt up. If you type in IP config, that will tell you information about your network. And you can see here it's got the IPv4 address, and on here I'm on a business network, so it's got 10.0.6.54, which is obviously in a totally different range to the 192 that's factory set on the controller. So we're not going to be able to see the controller with our current IP settings. At the moment this is using a DHCP server, so this IP address has been allocated to this computer, and we'll have a look at that in a minute. And you see here the other interesting thing here is we've got the subnet mask, which we were talking about earlier. That's the 255s that are listed there, the 255, 255, 2550, which is the class C we spoke about earlier. What we'll just also do, so the IP config just gives you details of your network. You often, if you've got Wi-Fi and things as well, it will show you all the details. You're looking at the one that says Ethernet. Another useful command in the command prompt is the ping command, and if I it basically just sends a low-level ping to the device across the network. So if we just try and ping that device, although it's turned on and powered up on the network, you'll see we won't be able to talk to it at the moment. So ping is timing out because it's saying basically that device is not there. So if we go and have a look at our network settings now, so down in this icon down here, there's various ways of getting to it. So if you right click there and open Internet Settings, and then this comes up with your Ethernet details, and you need to go into change adapter options there, and then go into this Ethernet here, and then it's the V4 you want to be looking at. So this is where you set up this IP address for your network. You see at the moment this is set to obtain IP address automatically, which is coming from a DHCP server. But what we need to do is to allocate an IP address manually to this computer. that's in the same range as the controller. So if we do 192.168.168, so the first three numbers, remember, are always the same to match the device. Remember the controller is 130 and we're going to be set to 100. Subnet mask, you see that's come up as all the defaults there, the class C. We're going to leave default gateway and everything else blank, and we're just going to click OK there. Click close out of that. You see now, if we have a look at ipconfig, it's got that 192.168.168.100 address that we were talking about. And also if we type ping, you'll see we're now getting a response from the controller. So now when we go into the device manager and click on the Ethernet, you'll see we can see our Ethernet controller there. And if you look on the Ethernet tab, you can see that's the address and the subnet mask that's set up in there for it. So what we could do is now we can change, we know what our IP address was on the other network before. It was 10.06. Obviously the last three digits need to be separate. So if I set this address to say 10.06, say 150, so we see we've saved that address now and it has changed. So I'm going to unplug the device now and power it back up again. And you see now we can't see that device. If we now go and change our network settings back to what they were, so IPv4, and use obtain address automatically. If I now go into the device manager and click on Ethernet, there you go, it's showing up on that address. And if we just go to ipconfig and check ipconfig again, you'll see we're back on the 10.06 network, which is our DHCP network. So that's what you need to do when you get set up with any of our Pixel controllers. So there's a few troubleshooting steps you can do if you have problems getting connected. Again, there's this ipconfig command we saw to check your local IP address and subnet mask. There's also the ping command you can use. You can try resetting your controller if it's one you've used before and you can't remember the settings for it. You can follow the factory reset to reset it to the 192.168.168.130 address. The other thing is if the controller is one with an SD card, you can always try removing that to ensure it's in slave mode, because otherwise the controller might be busy trying to run a show and things. So if you've got an SD card, just make sure that's removed when you're setting it up. A few other things: if you've got quite an advanced router, then you need to ensure that multicast is enabled on the router. Again, double check that your firewall is turned off if you have problems connecting. If you've got quite a fancy switch you're using or a broadband router, you could always change to using just a very basic 5-port hub without any intelligence in it, just to try getting connected that way. And also, if you still have problems, there is another way. There is a force address you can use within the device manager. You can try that, and also if it's a controller with an SD card, there is a settings file you can put on the SD card, and you can get the controller to load an address directly from that. You can always try that way of getting connected. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope that's given you a bit of information on our Pixel controllers and how to at least get connected and get up and running with them. If you have any questions, please do let us know.